Hey everyone, I'm going to tell you how Tears of the Kingdom fits into the Zelda timeline, and I think you might be surprised where. Hi, David here. Have you found yourself frustrated by all the differing opinions on the Zelda timeline? Yeah, you can't help but crawl back for more, looking for that perfect answer? Well, I don't know that perfect timeline exists.
Thanks, Miyamoto.
I will explain to you how Tears fits into the Zelda timeline while following 3 basic principles, which I'll outline shortly. Now, it goes without saying that there will be spoilers in this video. You can't explain a timeline without expanding on some aspects of the game. I will try to keep the spoilers contained to what pertains to the timeline. Now, this video is intended for Zelda nerds that are already quite familiar with Nintendo's official stance on the timeline. So if you need to refresh yourself on that, do that first. So let's do it. So Nintendo has stated that they want to see how fans come up with their theories on the timeline, so they haven't placed Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom on an official timeline. It's a common theory though that Breath of the Wild and Tears take place at the end of the timeline, so it's my job to ask why. At the beginning of Tears, we see Zelda fall in a chasm and go back in time. Where does she go? To the events of the imprisoning war. That's Tears of the past, so where is Tears in the future taking place? At the end, of course. It's pretty easy to see why.
Wow!
The imprisoning war is supposed to take place before A Link to the Past, which is on the Fallen timeline, one of the splits that happens after Ocarina of Time. It's safe to assume that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are at the end of the Fallen timeline. What?
Sorry, I gotta do it. Hello, folks. I've been listening to your theory and it sounds like you're way off. How do you explain Ganondorf?
Ganondorf? What about him?
Throughout the series, we only ever see one Ganondorf, one Zelda, and one Link at a time. This brings up the first principle, the reincarnation principle. If Ganondorf is sealed underneath the castle shortly after the imprisoning war, then how is he appearing in other games while he's locked down there?
Wow.
It's clear from precedent Ganondorf could not have been sealed underneath the castle from the imprisoning war to the end of the Fallen timeline, unless he was sneaking out? To justify this, we'd have to be okay with multiple Ganondorfs at once, defeating the purpose of defeating him. You right now may be saying, well, the game tells us he was sealed after the imprisoning war. How else can it work, you glistening hunk of a man, you? Well, it's true he was sealed after the imprisoning war. We can no longer assume the wars within the Fallen timeline. That's only possible if you think the founding of Hyrule also happened at that time. In Ocarina, it's clear that Hyrule has already been established. So the thought that the imprisoning war takes place after Ocarina conflicts with the founding of Hyrule. We know Nintendo places the founding of Hyrule between Skyward Sword and Minish Cap. We also know from the Dragon Tear memories that not only did Zelda encounter the imprisoning war when she went back in time, but also the recent founding of Hyrule. So according to the most evidence we have from the most recent game, directly from Zelda herself, we clearly see the imprisoning war happen with the founding king and queen sometime after Skyward Sword. The consensus had been that the imprisoning war took place just before A Link to the Past. But it's now clear to see with Tears that the exact time and events may have been lost to history. Like Zelda states in Dragon Tear Memory 2,
a time so far back in the past, it's become legend.
in fact, the account of the imprisoning war has details that resemble both Ocarina and the past in Tears. An example is the sages that seal Ganondorf. It happened in Ocarina with Mutton Chop's Rauru, and now we see it happen again in Tears. With these like events, it's easy to see how Highlands could mistake the facts of history. All this to say, if there is no reason to think the past in Tears is in the Fallen timeline, then there is no reason to believe that the end of Tears is at the end of the Fallen timeline any longer.
So what's your theory then?
Well, it's been established that after Ocarina, there were multiple splits in the timeline. This is evidence that the Zelda franchise operates on the split timeline theory of time travel. Going back in time splits the timeline. So when Zelda goes back in time in Tears, it stands to reason that the only outcome is a new timeline split.
Well, hold on now.
You sure about that?
There are 3 generally accepted theories of time travel, which brings us to the second principle, the order of time. There is fixed, you can't change time. Dynamic, like Back to the Future, where changed events in the past influence the future. And multiverse, which we call in Zelda split timelines. We see the precedent of split timelines already in the Zelda franchise, so it's easy to assume it's happening again. But wait! We see evidence directly from Tears of a fixed timeline. One example is how Ganondorf already knew who Link was before Zelda could go back in time to tell Rauru who told Ganondorf.
That the sword that seals the darkness. Zelda. Link.
When I witnessed what the secret stone did to Ganondorf, at that moment, I knew for sure. What we found underground, that was him.
Years from now, someone will appear with the sword that seals the darkness. A swordsman with the power to defeat you, Link. Remember this name.
If that was a timeline split, Ganondorf could never have known them within that timeline. Even if it could have been a timeline split, it would cause a paradox because Zelda would forever be falling into the chasm, going back in time, and creating new time splits. Zelda also recognized in Dragon Tear Memory number 10 that they could not beat Ganondorf.
We won't be able to defeat him. No matter how strong we think we are, he'll survive.
Indicating that she understands that she is within a fixed timeline, as she knows, number one, what she is now witnessing with Ganondorf has already happened in her past, and number two, nothing they do can prevent this from happening again. Because of the evidence that Tears gives us, we can deduce that Zelda's time travel operates on a fixed timeline principle.
Well, wait a minute, like on Lost? Whatever happened, happened?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
I suppose I can understand that, but how do you explain the Master Sword? A fixed timeline with no deviation doesn't work, because the Light Dragon doesn't have the sword in its head until Link sends it to Zelda. So then how does it get there?
Get out!
I think I have an idea. Daniel Faraday from the TV show Lost explains time travel as whatever happened, happened. You can't change anything. You can't make a new time stream. This brings us to the third principle, what we like to call the Faraday principle.
You cannot change anything. You can't. Even if you tried to, wouldn't work. Time, it's like a street, right? We can move forward on this street. We can move in reverse, but we cannot ever create a new street. If whatever happened, happened.
If that's the case though, and you can't change anything, how does the Master Sword appear on the Light Dragon's head only after Link sends it back in time? If you're familiar with the Faraday cage, it's an object or box that protects electronics from an EMP, leaving them unaffected from an electromagnetic pulse. I like to play on words that Lost used for his name, because just like a Faraday cage, the character Faraday finds someone named Desmond who is also unaffected by the fixed principle of time.
You're the only person who can help us because, Desmond, the rules don't apply to you. You're uniquely and miraculously special.
This causes the dynamic theory to come into play, where changes in the past influence the future. Just like Desmond, the Master Sword is the one variable that can change the time stream. We already know that the Master Sword has time properties. In fact, we see it used in Ocarina multiple times without causing time splits. You might be saying, hey, wait a minute, you dingus. Ocarina is where the time splits happened, but it was actually Zelda sending Link back in time that created that time split, not the Master Sword. When we watch the scene with Link sending the Master Sword back to Zelda, we see the immediate appearance of the Light Dragon. What the game does not reveal is that the Master Sword is now on the head of the dragon, which in this game you need stamina to pull.
Oh, son of a bitch, it's really on there.
As we see in the memories, Zelda receiving the sword was her motivation to help Link in the future.
I know why I am here. It's something only I can do.
You may ask, why was Zelda floating around before all this? I believe that would be her ultimate fate with or without the Master Sword. We also know with time travel that if you want to see more videos like these, like and subscribe. Then a dynamic change in time will occur and you'll get more videos like this in the future. That being said, I think it's clear where Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom fit in.
Yeah, obviously.
It takes place after Skyward Sword, but before Ocarina.
Wait, what?
If Zelda in the past takes place during the founding of Hyrule,
This is really the era of Hyrule's founding?
and the Imprisoning War comes right after that, then that obviously takes place right after Skyward Sword. And since there can't be more than one Ganon at a time, then Tear's presence must take place before the events of Ocarina of Time.
So you're saying sometime after Skyward Sword, a Zelda from the future appears, meeting the first king and queen of Hyrule.
And joins them in the Imprisoning War,
They encounter the original Ganondorf, and Rauru seals him away.
but not before giving away who Link and Zelda are.
Zelda was then motivated to become a dragon and bring Link his sword back,
Yes, and Zelda works with Minoru on preparing Link of the future to fight Ganondorf.
which explains the increase in the Zonai technology and the appearance of the Sky Islands with the upheaval.
Activated in response to Ganondorf's awakening. After they were fully prepared, Zelda swallowed the tear, stuck the Master Sword firmly in her skull, and floats off.
More than 10,000 years later in Breath of the Wild, we see the hatred of Ganondorf, Calamity Ganon, rise as the main antagonist of the game. Eventually, we see in Tears the unsealing of Ganondorf. He knows who Zelda and Link are because of Rauru in the past. He causes the upheaval, activating the Zonai defenses and the Sky Islands to rise.
Link defeats Ganon, who bombs harder than the last couple of Indiana Jones movies, ending the crusade to own the Secret Stones, and Ganondorf is then reincarnated at a later time to be a dickbag in Ocarina.
Thanks for watching our video, guys. What'd you think? Are there other ways you can make the timeline work using these principles?
Or any different theory you've come up with. Let us know in the comments.
Okay, we'll see you next time, or with the next Zelda game, which will probably upend everything again.
Yeah, probably.
See you guys.
See ya.